What is up, guys? Rick Kackis here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we are going to be discussing the fact that I spent 6 days in the corridors of time and all I got was a stupid fusion rifle. I had to say that for the meme, and someone has got to turn that into a t-shirt, but seriously, today we are going to be discussing all of the things, the big positives and the big negatives surrounding the Bastion Exotic Quest, because this is a really interesting one. The community right now is pretty divided. Some people think it was a disaster and it went poorly, and some people absolutely love it. Bungie tried to do something that involved the entire community, or a lot of the community. It was one of their biggest puzzles ever, and they're a studio known for community puzzles, so this is something we absolutely need to talk about. And so, let's get started. Now, first things first, let's talk about the reward, the Bastion, because before we can even discuss like the lengths and the method of acquiring it, we need to discuss why people are upset that the Bastion Exotic Fusion Rifle was at the end of all this. Well, it's because it was in the calendar. If you look at the Season of Dawn content calendar, it says Bastion on January 28th. So, of course, we thought it would function, almost identically to the Devil's Ruin, also on the calendar, where that day the quest becomes available, you do it, and you get it usually that day. So obviously when we have this brand new secret quest appearing out of nowhere, putting us through the corridors of time, people assumed, well, it's not the Bastion that's coming at a later date, in 2 weeks actually, this must be something else, this must be something new. And so it's somewhat understandable that people hype themselves up for, maybe a brand new exotic that we don't know about. Maybe something like the Razelighter exotic sword. I mean, the tomb at the end did have a sword on it that shared, a slight degree of similarity to the Razelighter, but I gotta be honest with you guys, part of the fault lies with you. Yeah, you watching, because there was no evidence that the Vex Mythoclast or the Galahorn or the Hawkmoon or any of those things was coming back with this quest, and that's why I was very sure not to put any of the unconfirmed exotics on any of the thumbnails on my videos covering this. But how many Vex Mythoclast speculation videos do y'all gotta watch before you realize you're being clickbaited? Like, there's no evidence for this stuff, but so many people still fell for the age-old trap of, oh, it could be the Vex Mythoclast. This guy was wrong the past 14 speculation videos, but maybe the 15th time he's got a point. Guys, stop. Like, come on. And unfortunately, what this resulted in is some just pie-in-the-sky expectations. The Vex Mythoclast and the Galahorn and stuff like that, even the Razelighter, would be such insanely cool additions to the game, and so people were expecting that. You're just letting yourself get disappointed when it is the Bastion. And I think a really interesting question to ask yourself with all of this is, if the Bastion wasn't on the calendar, if we had no idea this gun existed, and then we got it with this Corridors of Time quest, would you still be upset? And I think a lot of people would have to answer no. It's the first ever kinetic fusion rifle, super unique gun, actually pretty decent in PvP, not too shabby in PvE either. Again, it's not, Galahorn level, obviously, but it's something new and exciting. So it begs the question, why was it on the calendar, right? Like, if we could have had this brand new exotic we didn't see coming appear out of nowhere, why did Bungie spoil it? Now, Bungie has actually kind of responded to this on Twitter with DMG saying that they want to be open and transparent with what content is coming in a season so people can make the decision to buy that season. And that actually does make sense. Could you guys imagine if the calendar had come out for Season of Dawn and the Bastion just wasn't there, and the only exotic quest was the Devil's Ruin? I think a lot of people would be ripping on Bungie and saying like, oh, you guys are holding back content, this is such a content light season, like what the heck? And they couldn't say anything because they have this big exotic secret quest planned, right? It puts them in an awkward position for sure. They want to be upfront with exactly how much content is in the season so people are more likely to buy. And that makes perfect sense. But why do you need to specifically say the Bastion? If we actually take a look back at some of the older seasonal calendars pictured right here for the annual pass, you'll notice nothing is listed by name. It just says Exotic Quest. And we as a community see that and think, okay, well, that is either a returning D1 exotic, which was the case for a lot of these, to be honest, or a brand new exotic. And I don't know why they didn't do that, because the interesting part is, like, we didn't really know anything, or we're not supposed to know anything about the Bastion. So they could have said, hey, new secret exotic quest happening between January 14th and January 28th. Like, it's a more vague description, obviously, but people would have still seen that and thought, okay, well, that's content, right? So again, I don't know why they need to be so specific and out the actual Bastion by name. That seems unnecessary. So I think it's that mishandling and the confusion with the calendar that brought the negativity, unnecessarily so, to the Bastion, because it is a pretty cool gun at the end of the day. But there's also the issue of how this quest was discovered, as well as what people are required to do now. So, as for the community puzzle and how the actual exotic quest was uncovered and unlocked, boy, this is a really interesting one, because on the one hand, this is one of the best things about Destiny, and this is one of the coolest and most interesting things to happen in arguably years, or at least almost a year, since the Outbreak Perfected quest. So this was an opportunity for Bungie and Destiny to put themselves on the map. A lot of people were talking about this. There was, gaming publications talking about, hey, there's this crazy puzzle going on in Destiny. But there was some complaints about the participation. And, myself personally, as someone who, I didn't stream during the time, anything like that, I literally just worked on the puzzle and decoded people's entries. Like, people would submit their puzzle pieces, and I would sit there and codify it into the spreadsheet so it could be used to match up the map. And for those of us actually in the trenches working on doing that, you felt like you were participating. But I do get the argument from a lot of people, and, publicly, Gathalion and Broman, two huge streamers, kind of expressed that, hey, you're not really that involved. The community is not really that involved, and this doesn't feel too inclusive. And I get where they're coming from. A lot of people would just take a picture and submit it, and that was it. Like, that was their contribution. It would take just a few minutes, and then we would do the rest. It was like, we'll take it from here. And that truly doesn't feel as inclusive as it could. With that being said, like, what more could Bungie have done at that point? They could have possibly included some in-game tools to submit your image or something crazy like that, but that is so much development time and work, and I think you guys would agree that there's like bigger issues Bungie should be tackling right now than to have an in-game screenshot function or something crazy like that. But also, we did run into problems because too many people wanted to be included. This sounds a little mean, and I swear I'm not trying to be mean, but honestly, the spreadsheets would sometimes crash and have issues because so many people were trying to edit them at once. It was just too much, and that honestly may have delayed us a little bit at the end of the day. Like, you want to have as many people involved as possible, but the nature of this puzzle lent itself to a few dedicated teams submitting and decoding like perfect data without errors. Every time there was an error, you had someone new, you gave them the overview, but they made a few mistakes off the bat. Those errors added so much time to the completion of this puzzle. So that was another really interesting and difficult thing about this. However, even if members of the community couldn't be directly involved, they sure as heck were involved from the sidelines, and I mean that in a positive way. The streamers like Glad and Chevy and so on that were just streaming spreadsheets and data collection, so many people were watching and making memes and having fun, and a lot of the community was just watching this whole thing unfold and having fun doing so. But at the end of the day, after 6 hard days of puzzle solving, eventually the code was cracked. It was a massive 30-digit code, and it's not even needed anymore. This, I think, is the worst part of all of these events, is the fact that after this crazy cool puzzle, it had some negatives, but it had overwhelmingly more positives. To discover this crazy code, the code was only necessary for basically one single day. And now, if you want the Bastion quest, you can just go and pick it up from Saint 14. Not only that, but the entire corridors of time, if you want to go in and collect the lore or get the emblem for the 11-digit code, that's also disappearing on the 28th. This to me is extremely confusing because people are going to hear about this. You have new players hearing about this massive, crazy, community-involved puzzle that took 6 days to solve, and then they pick it up from Saint and do a couple of public events and get the gun. Like, what? Because without the code, without going through the corridors of time, this quest is extremely boring and just lame. Like, you're just doing a few slightly time-consuming things and killing some bosses that aren't even hard to kill. It just doesn't make any sense that Bungie would remove the need for this code so quickly. At least remove the need for the code on the 28th when this quest was supposed to come out anyways. And I think doing so, well, firstly, it massively cheapens the quest by removing the coolest and most interesting part of the quest. It makes it a tiny bit more difficult to enter the code, but in reality, like I was talking about this on Twitter and people were like, yeah, it took me 5-10 minutes. You just run through a bunch of doors, you could ignore enemies. Like, at some point we gotta say, hey, you gotta do something minorly challenging to get a brand new exotic. You can't just log on and get an exotic in your inventory, despite some casual players apparently thinking that's the way to go. Like, people are so keen to get stuff without having to put in any effort. I swear, people, again, just want to log in and get every weapon in the game. But not only that, this decision gets even stupider because when you actually enter that big code and discover that final room, you get a massive piece of dialogue from Saint 14 that explains the entire purpose of this quest. So if you just pick it up directly from Saint, you don't get that. So you're like, what is this Bastion weapon? Like, what am I doing here? So Bungie is so eager to give out this quest easily that they're willing to let their player base like miss out on a key piece of dialogue. That would be like pushing out the campaign of the original Destiny 2, the Red War campaign, without the first mission. Like, you could just start from the second mission. People would be like, wait, what's going on? It doesn't make any sense. And it's also, I think, insulting not only to the community members that put all of this work into discovering this code, but also the Bungie devs that worked on creating this puzzle. All of their work and their sacrifice is only needed for a day, and now it's completely unnecessary. I think this was a huge mistake. I think it just completely takes away the soul and the interesting and cool part of this quest and of this weapon. And if you're just picking up from Saint 14, you are just going to be confused as to what the heck all the fuss was about, honestly. And also, like, why are the corridors of time going away so quickly? Couldn't they go away at the end of the season? Why do they have to go away now? So at the end of the day, I think that Bungie's heart was in the right place, and Bungie's idea for this community-involved puzzle to discover the right pathway through time, that concept is so darn cool. The weapon itself, I think personally, is a decent weapon. They just kind of handled this thing poorly by displaying the actual weapon on the database instead of saying new secret exotic quest coming sometime within these dates. That would have been much better. Not only that, but putting in all of this work for this crazy puzzle and then making it not even require, and then taking away the entire area it takes place like a couple weeks later too. Those, I think, are massive misfires, and it doesn't really let the community reap the rewards of their work. In any event, those are my thoughts on the matter, but what do you guys think? How involved were you in the puzzle? Did you just watch it happen, or were you one of the people entering data? Let me know, and what do you think of this whole crazy thing? Guys, that's it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this interesting. If you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.